Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 83 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. Although the Devil Prison armies were powerful, they did not have any reinforcements. Moreover, the three great alliances were cooperating with each other and their morale was high. Within a short 10 days, the two armies stationed outside of the Western Xian region had been completely defeated. They were completely defeated after being chased by the Alliance army, suffering countless of deaths in the process. The situation of the three great regions gradually stabilized after now that things had reached this stage. Once they cleaned up the battlefields and made some preparations, the armies of the three great alliances would begin to gather towards the four Xian regions. Their momentum was undoubtedly extremely overwhelming. When the people of the four Xian regions were filled with shock as they watched the black cloud-like waves of soldiers sweeping through the sky. Compared to this, the war that came about in the Eastern Xian region due to Yuan Gate back then could only be considered child's play. The three great alliance armies gathered in the four Xian regions. After a brief reorganization, they began to head towards the Western Xian region. The pressure from their mighty aura caused even the sky to dim. That majestic battle intent formed from the gathering of countless individuals made the world trembling in its wake. On a majestic peak within at the borders of the Western Xian region, Lin Dong detected the approach of the three great alliance armies. He opened his eyes and peered into the distance with a grave expression. Is the decisive battle about to begin? Lin Dong muttered to himself. This calm before the storm made him feel that as if it was difficult to breathe. This time, they no longer had a legendary existence like the symbol ancestor who could support the greatest burden. They could only rely on themselves to protect this world. Lin Dong deeply inhaled. After which, his eyes looked towards the light array in the sky. This was the 15th day. However, the summoning did not lead to anything. If it was not because of Ying Huanhuan's certainty, Lin Dong would have suspected that the Life-Death Master had failed to reincarnate. If this was the case, it would undoubtedly be a big blow towards for them all. Lin Dong frowned. However, the light array in the sky suddenly shook just as he was feeling a little uneasy in his heart. Subsequently, he saw a dazzling light suddenly shoot towards the sky. This light beam was extremely mysterious. It appeared to possess a mighty aura, but an ordinary person was unable to detect it. Even Lin Dong was only able to sense it because he had advanced to the Divine Palace level. Ying Huanhuan's group opened their eyes at this moment. Some anxiety was present within them. If even this summoning light could not summon the Life-Death Master, it would mean that they had failed. All we can do now is wait for a response. They exchanged glances with each other. They had already done all they could. Some changes occurred in the distant Great Desolate Province of the Eastern Xian region when the mysterious light beam shot towards the sky. A tiny figure was seated on a tall building in a city at the middle of the Great Desolate Province. Her small, slim and fair legs swung to and fro as her small lips continued to hum a joyous tune. The tune from the little girl's lips suddenly stopped as she lifted her small face and looked into the distance with a lost expression. Those innocent and large eyes of hers could see an extremely dazzling ray of light in the distant sky. That is. The little girl's swinging legs slowly halted as countless colors swam in her large eyes. Soon after, a painful expression emerged on her small face as if something was awakening deep within her mind. Bang! An extremely terrifying aura suddenly exploded, causing the clouds in the sky above the city to distort. They vaguely transformed into a 10,000 feet large black and white cloud. It twisted and squirmed as it turned into a giant circular cloud. The giant cloud was black and white, appearing just like life and death. A figure suddenly shot out from within the city. After which, she swiftly appeared on the tall building and looked at the little girl, whose large eyes were filled with changing colors. Anxiety flashed across her face as she hurriedly cried, "Yin Yin. What is happening to you?" That small girl called Yin Yin slowly lifted her small face and gazed at the beautiful and dear woman in front of her. She quickly gave the latter a faint smile. However, this smile no longer possessed the same innocent and carefree appearance as before. "You. Jiang Shui's pretty face was a little pale as she observed the current Yin Yin, while tears gathered within her eyes. Have you awakened? Yin Yin walked off the tall building, stepping on the air as she arrived in front of Jiang Shui and gently embraced her. Her voice still appeared a little immature. Thank you, elder sister. Jiang Shui trembled slightly as she looked at the little girl in her embrace. Her eyes were red as she said, Are you still my little sister? Awakening does not mean that the old memories are erased. Although I have changed, I am both the Life-Death Master and Yin Yin. Yin Yin softly said. Life-Death Master. Jiang Shui's figure shook. She was aware that Yin Yin was a reincarnator. However, she never imagined that Yinin's former reincarnation would actually be one of the 8 masters, the Life-Death Master. Are you going to leave us? Jiang Shui mumbled. No way. I am going to lend them a hand. Elder sister should know of Devil Prison. We will never be able to live peacefully if we do not finish them off. Yin Yin shook her head. She smiled at Jiang Shui and said, Elder sister, you can be rest assured that I will return once I settle those matters. Is that all right? Jiang Shui was speechless. She could only nod her head and hug the little girl as if she was afraid to lose her. Yin Yin also hugged Jiang Shui's neck. After which, she softly kissed Jiang Shui's neck. Soon after, her body slowly faded until she completely disappeared. You must come back. Jiang Shui looked at her now empty arms as tears involuntarily fell. Lin Dong looked at the light beam in the sky. His heart suddenly shook, and his eyes peered into the distance where light was flashing. A moment later, a tiny figure appeared before their anxious eyes. The light disappeared and a little girl was revealed. Subsequently, Lin Dong's group was left completely stunned. You. Lin Dong looked at this somewhat familiar and cute little girl as disbelief surged in his eyes. You are Yin Yin? Big brother. Yin Yin gave Lin Dong a sweet smile. After which, she directly pounced towards him in front of Ying Huan and the rest's stunned eyes. Lin Dong gazed at the large black eyes of this little girl. A deep feeling had appeared within those originally pure and innocent eyes. Such depths appeared as though they had seen though life and death. Lin Dong's body gradually stiffened. His eyes were filled with shock. Who could have imagined that the Life-Death Master, whom they had searched for such a long time, was actually Yin Yin? On the mountain peak, Lin Dong looked at the little girl, which had leapt into his embrace, with some remnant shock in his eyes. In fact, it was a long while later before he finally inhaled a deep breath of air and lowered his head to look at Yin Yin. Immediately, he saw the latter staring back at him with her large smiling eyes. However, her eyes no longer looked as innocent as before. Instead, there was a teasing expression within them. How unexpected! The person whom I met so many years ago is actually the renowned Life-Death Master now. Lin Dong sighed with a complicated emotion in his heart. Was the current Yin Yin still that naive and innocent little girl whom he met in the past? In fact, Lin Dong could not find the slightest hint of that girl within her eyes. Perhaps Yinin's memories had merged with the Life-Death Master, but as of now, she was most likely the Life-Death Master. There is no need to frown. Reincarnation is not the same as rebirth. The merger of 2 sets of memories is not equivalent to getting rid of one of them. In my heart, I am still the same Yin Yin when facing elder sister. Yinin's dark black large eyes seemed to have seen through Lin Dong's mind as she laughingly said. Lin Dong scratched his head. After which, he looked at Ying Huan and the rest, who were standing beside him, before he shrugged his shoulders and said, Your big senior sister is back. Hello, everyone. Did you guys miss me? Yin Yin waved her small hand towards Ying Huan's group. Meanwhile, the smile on her small face looked exceptionally innocent. Big senior sister, this appearance really suits you. The spatial master walked towards her with a smile, before he extended his arm and tugged Yinin's long hair. However, the latter immediately leapt up before she ruthlessly pulled his ear and said, Little space, you must be respectful towards big senior sister. Where are your manners? How many times have I told you before? When the Flame Master and the rest saw this, they laughed bitterly immediately. Unexpectedly, even after her appearance changed, the Life-Death Master's violent nature remained the same. After lecturing the Spatial Master, the Life-Death Master finally patted her small hands before she turned to look at the Western Xian region. Promptly, a dark expression flashed across her large eyes before she said, "It seems like they have found the devil-suppressing prison which I was suppressing previously." Ying Huan nodded and said, "Currently, the troops from the three great alliances are rushing over. Once their troops arrives, we will attack the Western Xian region and exterminate the devil prison. I never expected that another great world war is about to begin. However, this time around, teacher is not around to help us. Therefore, we can only rely on ourselves." The Life-Death Master sighed. Meanwhile, a juvenile voice contained a solemnness that left one feeling pressured. The expression of the Flame Master's group became increasingly solemn upon hearing this. "Big senior sister, there is no need to be so pessimistic. Teacher might no longer be around, but the devil prison has also lost their Yimo Emperor. In fact, they are trapped in this world like prisoners and there is ultimately no way they can escape death." Ying Huan said. "Ha ha, that's right. Teacher might not be around, but the most frightening Yimo, the Yimo Emperor, is also not around." The Life-Death Master smiled and nodded. Following which, a fearsome glint flashed across her large eyes before she looked at the Western Xian region and said, "This time around, we must get rid of them completely. The Alliance army should arrive in another 2 days." The Flame Master said. "I?" The Life-Death Master extended her small arms before she smilingly said, "In that case, let's wait for another 2 days. After which, we will go and exterminate all the Yimo." Even though she had an innocent smile on her face when she uttered these words, the frightening murderous desire within her words caused the surrounding temperature to plummet. "Big brother." The Life-Death Master tilted her small head before she looked at Lin Dong. "Can you not address me in this manner?" Lin Dong shuddered involuntarily before he said helplessly. The Life-Death Master involuntarily chuckled before she said in a lazy manner, "You are quite capable indeed. Even an ice queen like our little junior sister was conquered by you. Tell me, what techniques did you use?" "Big senior sister." Ying Huan cried out somewhat helplessly. "Ha ha, all right. I'll drop this. However, little fellow, you are quite capable indeed. Just how many years has it been? Yet, you actually formed a divine palace. It seems like you are in no way inferior to little junior sister." The Life-Death Master laughed. She had naturally detected Lin Dong's strength. Although his Yuan power cultivation was merely at the reincarnation stage and was hardly outstanding in her eyes, the ripple emitted from his divine palace took her by surprise. Beside them, the Flame Master and the rest shrugged their shoulders towards Lin Dong. Clearly, they were used to this. "All of you can carry on without us. I have something to discuss with little junior sister." The Life-Death Master pulled Ying Huan aside before they walked into the distance. After which, she stopped beside a cliff. Following which, the smile on her small face gradually disappeared as she said, "You are suppressing the power within your body, am I right?" "I?" Ying Huan looked into the distance and nodded faintly. The Life-Death Master sat at the edge of the cliff before she muttered, "In your current state, it's impossible for you to defeat the Heaven Seat King. Big senior sister, don't worry. I am aware of my own limits." Ying Huan laughed. The Life-Death Master sighed, "You have truly changed after one reincarnation. However, you should do as you deem fit. After all, amongst all of us, you are the only one who can defeat the Heaven Seat King." Currently, Ying Huan was also sitting beside her. Meanwhile, her delicate hands were wrapped around her knees as she softly said, "How nice would it be if the Yimo did not exist? If that was the case, there would be no need for her to awaken her power, nor would she have to freeze all her emotions and endure that endless lonely iciness." With a complicated expression on her face, the Life-Death Master said, "It has been hard on you. Why must this burden fall on your shoulders?" Ying Huan shook her head gently. Following which, she buried her head between her knees before she softly said, "Don't worry. This time around, we will definitely emerge victorious." After they summoned the Life-Death Master, the next 2 days were rather peaceful. Occasionally, they would look towards the north. At that distant land, they could detect that a frightening desire to fight was slowly sweeping over. That fighting desire could shake the world. In fact, despite the ancient master's formidable might, their expressions turned solemn. This aura was formed after gathering every top expert in this world. Therefore, this was not something that anyone alone could block by himself. On the third day, when the first ray of sunlight shone onto the ground, the calm before the storm gradually died down. Lindong's group lifted their heads before they saw countless figures flooding over from the distant sky like a swarm of locusts. In fact, their sharp rushing wind noises could be heard from 300 miles away. Many large clusters of powerful soldiers rushed over. Finally, they gradually landed in front of this mountain. At a glance, the sky and the ground were covered by a large sea of people. In fact, with a single glance, it was impossible to see and enter this massive alliance army. Lindong and the 7 of them were standing on the mountain peak. Following which, countless experts from the alliance army discovered their presence. Immediately, respectful and orderly voices reverberated, "Greetings to the elders." Following which, a few glowing figures shot out from within the large alliance army. After which, they swiftly approached the mountain peak. "Big brother." A powerful voice sounded. After which, a metal tower-like figure directly rushed towards Lindong. Subsequently, he landed heavily on the mountain peak, causing it to vibrate slightly. "Little Flame." When Lindong saw that metal tower-like man, a trace of joy flashed across his eyes. Currently, Little Flame looked even more muscular compared to before. However, his skin appeared to be extremely rough. Meanwhile, a faint purple-gold glow was being vaguely emitted from him. This fluctuation. A glint flashed across Lindong's eyes. This was because he could detect a relatively familiar fluctuation from within Little Flame's body. It was the strength of an ancestral symbol. It's the Chaos ancestral symbol. The Chaos Master smiled faintly. He sized up Little Flame's body before he nodded. It seems like he was quite satisfied with who the Chaos ancestral symbol chose as its new owner. Little Flame rubbed his head and laughed. "1 year ago, I stumbled across it. After that, I gave it a try and ended up winning the acknowledgement of the Chaos ancestral symbol." Lindong grinned and nodded. He was happy that Little Flame had such a chance encounter. In fact, it was possible for him to detect that Little Flame had already advanced to the reincarnation stage. Together with the Chaos ancestral symbol, there was no need for Little Flame to fear even if he was up against a true King Yimo. Lindong smiled. After which, his eyes turned towards Little Flame's side. At that spot, stood a black-clothed handsome tall young man. Who else could he be besides Little Martin? However, perhaps it was because he was in charge of the Demon Region Alliance, his face looked colder and sterner than before. At this moment, Little Martin was also looking at Lindong. Meanwhile, there was a warm expression on his handsome face. Both of them smiled as they looked at each other. The brotherly feelings between the both of them was beyond question. "That's right, there is someone who really wants to meet you." As if he suddenly recalled something, Little Martin turned around and waved to the Demon Region Alliance army behind him. Following which, a bright light shot over. Then, that bright light disappeared before a slim beautiful young lady appeared in front of Lindong. This young lady had a soft and tall body. Meanwhile, she was wearing a long dress while her black hair was tied randomly. Her skin was snow white and she had a narrow willow-like waist. She had high eyebrows, a tall nose and sexy red lips. When she curled her lips, the smile on the corner of her lips looked extremely enchanting and it would cause one's heart to flutter. Just looking at her would leave one absent-minded. You Xinqing?" However, Lindong did not lose his mind because of her bewitching beauty. Instead, he merely stared at her in shock before he cried out joyously. "Xinqing greets Lord Lindong." The young lady bowed towards Lindong. However, there was a trace of pure and natural temptation flowing within her faint smile. Meanwhile, there was joy within her lively pretty eyes, which could not be concealed, as she stared boldly at Lindong in a heated fashion. This young lady was in fact Xinqing, The girl who had accompanied Lin Dong to the demon region back then, only to end up sealing her entire stockade in order to receive the nine-tailed fox inheritance. However, within a few years, the young lady from before had already undergone a drastic transformation. In fact, she no longer looked as delicate and timid as before. Even with Lin Dong's mental fortitude, he involuntarily felt a little strain when she stared at him with her bright watery eyes. The nine-tailed foxes were indeed extremely attractive. It's no wonder even though the devouring master had a wife, he still ended up having ties with the nine-tailed fox. "How is your stockade doing?" Lin Dong smilingly asked. Xin Qing curled her small lips and nodded. She said, "Our nine-tailed tribe has once again become one of the overlord tribes in the demon region. It's all thanks to Lord Lin Dong's help. Xin Qing will never forget this huge favor." Lin Dong smiled. When he heard about what happened to the nine-tailed fox stockade, he felt joy in his heart. Many figures once again rushed over from afar. Qing Tan, Ling Qingshu, Tang Xinlian, Qingxi and the many elite members of the alliance had rushed over. Ying Huan looked at the alliance army, before she inhaled a deep breath and said, "Since everyone is here, the three alliance armies shall be commanded by Miss Xinlian. Everyone must do their best to assist her. If we lose this war, it is likely that every living being in this world will fall into the hands of the devil prison." "Understood." Everyone cupped their hands together solemnly upon hearing this. Clearly, all of them knew how crucial the final upcoming battle was. In that case, Ying Huan exchanged glances with the Life-Death Master and the rest. Following which, a stern expression flashed across their eyes. "Let's head out and attack the Western Xian region." The Western Xian region was once one of the four great Xian regions. However, as of now, this vast region had undergone a drastic transformation. In fact, both the ground and sky were completely pitch black. Meanwhile, viscous demonic aura permeated the sky, and after the demonic aura gathered and reached a certain extent, they would transform into devil clouds. Finally, devil rain would descend from the sky in all directions. Deep within every area permeated by the demonic aura, there were numerous roars being emitted. Meanwhile, these roars were all filled with violence and brutality. A mountain range within the Western Xian region. As of now, the originally peaceful and quiet atmosphere in this mountain range was already ruined. Countless demonic beasts were fleeing the mountain range as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, it was possible to vaguely spot many figures hidden deep within this mountain range. Currently, all of them were bunched up together. Moreover, their eyes contained rich fear as they looked at their backs. Sizzle sizzle. Far behind them, waves of demonic aura rolled over. Meanwhile, there were countless diabolical scarlet eyes within the demonic aura. They were as quick as a phantom, and deafening sharp laughters would sound continuously. As the waves of demonic aura shot forward, they completely penetrated the numerous demonic beasts and humans in front of them. Dense blood spread along with sharp screeches. This was akin to a hunt. However, as of now, these living beings were all prey while the Yimo were the merciless hunters. Although the Western Xian region had been occupied by the devil prison for a long time, this place was simply too vast. Meanwhile, many humans and living beings had no time to flee, and they were trapped in this region. Faced with the powerful Yimo, all they could do was to hide carefully like a bunch of mice. After all, they knew that a cruel fate would await them if they were found. This place was near the border of the Western Xian region. If they were able to escape, they would be able to reach a safe place. The difference between these two places was equivalent to the difference between heaven and hell. Everyone clung onto this thought as they tried their best to suppress the fear within their hearts. However, when they saw that the Yimo were slowly catching up to them, despair and grief involuntarily rose in their hearts. Are we ultimately unable to escape? A bloody fog drifted from behind and dyed the faces of many people red. Promptly, they quickly rubbed off the blood trails on their faces. However, just as the despair within their eyes soared to its peak, someone suddenly stopped before he stared in shock at the distant sky. A hurried rushing wind sound suddenly sounded in the distant sky. Subsequently, clusters of dark clouds rushed over. As those dark clouds slowly approached them, they finally realized that it was actually an army made up of countless powerful humans. Countless figures rushed over from all directions. They were just like a swarm of locusts as they blotted out the sun. Meanwhile, a frightening fighting desire gathered before it actually pushed back the frightening demonic aura which permeated the western Xian region, forcing them to retreat continuously. That is, everyone who was fleeing in this mountain range suddenly came to a stop. As they stared at the army sweeping over from all directions, wild joy suddenly surged within their despairing eyes. Ah ah ah! They waved their hands crazily while sharp cries sounded. This sight, which appeared at their most desperate moment, gave them the impulse to burst into tears. The Yimo army that were chasing after them from behind suddenly stopped. Meanwhile, they used their scarlet-red eyes to stare at the large alliance army which had showed up. Promptly, fear flashed across their faces. Soon after, a sharp cry sounded before the demonic aura actually began to retreat rapidly. Charge! However, right after they retreated, an orderly explosive cry, which caused the land to vibrate, sounded. Soon after, the surrounding Yuan power turned violent before countless Yuan power pillars whistled forward and charged crazily towards the Yimo army. Bang bang bang! The land trembled violently. The fearsome Yimo army collapsed under this overwhelming attack. In fact, even their demonic aura were completely eradicated. The three great alliance army listen up, take formation and push forward. Along the way, if you run into any Yimo, kill him immediately. A lovely cold cry wrapped by majestic Yuan power spread across the sky in an extremely stern fashion, before it reverberated across the entire place. Understood? Countless soldiers responded in an orderly fashion. The sound agglomerated from thousands of soldiers caused the air to tremble until it even began to buzz. Countless soldiers whistled forward. As they advanced, they had clearly formed a battle formation. By doing so, if they were attacked, they would be able to respond quickly. The many figures in the mountain range, who were all rescued in time, stared in shock at the throngs of soldiers sweeping across the sky like a swarm of locusts. Following which, the frightening battle desire, which had been agglomerated together, caused their bodies to boil. All of you should leave the western Xian region as quickly as possible. A member of the upper echelon of the Three Alliance army rushed out. Then, he looked at them, before he waved his hand and cried out loud. After which, he quickly returned to his position. That is the army from the three great alliances. They are taking back the western Xian region and duking it out with the devil prison. Some people were clearly well informed. Therefore, they immediately exclaimed in joy after they saw this lineup. Should we follow them? All of a sudden, rich hatred began to surge within some people's eyes. Then, they gritted their teeth before they turned to stare at the western Xian region, which was now covered with demonic aura. Soon after, they turned around and roared. Finally, they followed behind the army and charged forward. My martial brothers were all killed by the Yimo. Where else can I go? The western Xian region is my home. Even if I die, I want to die here. No one knew who had released these miserable roars. However, the eyes of many individuals quickly turned red. In the next moment, these people, who were fleeing miserably out of fear previously, seemed to have regained their courage as they turned around and quickly followed the Alliance army. Only the furious roars that occasionally sounded demonstrated the pain within their hearts. Commander. Standing in the sky, a small platoon from the Alliance army looked at the commotion below before they turned to look at their commander. Let them follow us. They need to take their revenge as well. With the Alliance chief commanding the army and so many elders around, nothing will go wrong. We only need to encircle the Yimo. That commander shook his head. After all, he could empathize with them. This was because he was the only one left in his family. Understood. The Alliance army was just like a massive torrent. Ever since they crossed the western Xian region, they began to push forward in an orderly steel-like fashion. Along the way, everywhere they passed, countless Yimo were killed by them. Everywhere they passed, the flames of war would rage, turning the place into a complete mess. However, despite being pressured by the massive Alliance army, the devil prison did not make a move. Their silence caused Xuan to feel even more uneasy. According to our intelligence reports, the most powerful troops in the devil prison are all gathered in the Western Xian city. That city used to be the Western Xian sect's headquarters. However, the Western Xian sect was eliminated by the devil prison. While that large army advanced, Tang Xinlian, who was located in the middle of the army, looked into the distance. Meanwhile, there was a cold and stern expression on her pretty face. Over the last few months, there has been no activity from the devil prison. They must be working on something secretly. Therefore, everyone must remain cautious. Ying Huan and Lin Dong nodded. Given the devil prison's character, there was no way they would simply sit back and wait for their death. In fact, they had fought with the Yimo numerous times since the ancient World War. However, they had never seen the Yimo acting in this manner. The reason why they do not dare to take the initiative to attack is likely because they are fearful of us. After all, the situation now is different from before. The crack between the plains has been sealed and they no longer have a continuous stream of reinforcements, nor do they have a Yimo emperor. Therefore, they are at a disadvantage compared to us. The Flame Master slowly said. Regardless, it's best to remain cautious. A solemn expression flashed across the Life-Death Master's innocent-looking face. Then, she looked into the distance and muttered, "The reason why we have an advantage is because Teacher ignited his reincarnation. Hence, no matter what happens, we must win this war." Everyone nodded solemnly. As of now, every powerful force in this world was gathered in this place. Therefore, if they failed, it was likely that no one else would be able to stop the devil prison. At that time, the entire world would become just like the Western Xian region, and all living beings would become prey for the devil prison. At our current speed, the army should reach the Western Xian Great Desert in 2 days. Tang Xinlian inhaled a deep breath of air. Her voluminous chest rose gently before she said, "There is no way we can retreat. Therefore, for the sake of every living being in this world and the important people that we care about, please allow us to fight with all our strength." The Great Desert of the Western Xian region. This was the most spacious region within the Western Xian region. In the past, a sea of yellow sand would stretch on endlessly. However, right now, that sand had turned dark black in color. Evil demonic aura rose from within the desert. This magnificent and large desert was now completely polluted. Meanwhile, a towering city stood all alone in the middle of this desert. This city was once the most flourishing place within the entire Western Xian region. However, as of now, there was not a soul in sight. Meanwhile, viscous demonic aura enveloped this place and one could vaguely see countless scarlet ferocious eyes flashing within the demonic fog. There was a tall black tower in the middle of the city. This tall tower was tens of thousands of feet in size and it overlooked the entire city. Currently, there were a couple of black figures standing at the top of this tower. Meanwhile, they were all looking towards the north. This was because they could detect that a terrifying pressure was slowly creeping over from that direction. Finally, they are about to arrive. Standing right in front, the Heaven Seat King, who was dressed in black robes, gave a faint smile. His face was exceptionally fair and the smile on his lips even looked fairly warm and friendly. However, his dark black eyes were void of emotion. Finally, after so many years, we no longer have to hide. I really look forward to killing all of them. Standing beside him, a skinny young man extended his scarlet tongue before he smacked his lips as he laughingly said, "Are you all prepared?" The Heaven Seat King smiled and said, "Aye." Everyone standing behind him grinned before they nodded. Meanwhile, endless brutality was surging within their laughters. "Very well." The Heaven Seat King stretched his waist, before the smile on his lips became increasingly warm. When he looked towards the north, a wild maniacal sharp glow began to accumulate deep within his eyes as he muttered to himself, "I am really looking forward to it." The setting sun hung in the sky over the yellow sands of the Great Desert. This ought to have been a spectacular scene. However, this place was currently covered by overflowing demonic chi. Countless sharp howls were occasionally heard, giving an additional trace of sorrow to this majestic sight. Boom! This scenery lasted for an unknown amount of time, before the sky suddenly trembled. The demonic chi that filled the great desert seemed to shiver as if affected. A black line suddenly surfaced on the horizon and rapidly expanded. Within a short couple of minutes, it had already transformed into an endless sea of humans that encircled the entire great desert. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Innumerable rushing wind sounds continuously rang out in the sky. The aura and battle intent of the huge army converged and seemingly covered the sky as they swept forth. This lineup would terrify anyone. The demonic chi which pervaded the desert was continuously pushed back under the pressure of that astonishing battle intent. Halt! Within the main formation, Tang Xinlian looked at the great desert which had appeared before their eyes. A cold glint flashed across her pretty eyes as her cold voice resounded amongst the three armies. Three armies, get into formation and remove the demonic chi. Understood. Countless voices replied in an orderly fashion. Subsequently, vast and mighty Yuan power swept forth and directly charged into the desert. The originally jet-black desert began to regain some of its original color as Yuan power swept past, and even the sky became a little clearer. It was impossible to see the start and end of the Great Alliance army. Battle formations that were linked from head to tail started to spread out like a fan as they slowly approached the western Xian Great Desert. Finally, the army entered the desert and removed the demonic chi. The earth shook as they marched towards the middle of the desert. The entire desert shuddered. The sky and ground were basically completely occupied by human figures. This was a gathering of all the experts in the world. The Alliance army pushed forward step by step. Strangely, they did not encounter any obstructions. Hence, within a short period of an hour, the Alliance army gradually came to a stop. Countless hatred-filled red eyes were already looking towards a certain spot in the distance. There was an enormous city in the middle of this black desert. It lay there like an evil beast from the depths of hell, while a frightening aura faintly spread. Even the monstrous battle intent of the Alliance army became sluggish in the face of that aura. Was this the headquarters of Devil Prison? The Alliance army stopped 100 miles from the city. Both sides were silent as the atmosphere grew increasingly heavy. Everyone knew that once this atmosphere was broken, the most frightening battle in 1,000 years would erupt. Ha ha, everyone is finally here. I have waited here with Devil Prison for a long time. The almost solid atmosphere lasted for a long time, before demonic chi suddenly gathered above the city, and a black-robed figure slowly appeared. He looked at the distant Alliance army, which filled the sky, and smiled as his warm voice reverberated over the entire desert. Many figures shot out from the Alliance army and appeared at the front. Ying Huan's icy blue eyes looked at the familiar black figure as she spoke in a faint voice. It has been a long time, Heaven Seat King. Ha ha, indeed. We have not met for thousands of years. It is unexpected that Ice Master is still as beautiful as ever and remains a source of admiration. The Heaven Seat King on the city wall smiled at Ying Huan as he replied. Truth be told, I am a little tired after fighting for so many years. Why don't we shake hands and end the conflict this time? What do you say? The Heaven Seat King laughed softly. Dirty things. All of you should scram from this world. This place does not belong to you. The Life-Death Master lifted her large eyes and lazily said. The Heaven Seat King smiled. He lifted his head as his gaze seemed to penetrate the horizon. Go back? We also wish to do so. Why don't you help us open the crack between the planes and allow us to return? Once all of you have been purified, your soul should be able to return to wherever you wish to. The Flame Master said. Ha ha ha, you people are as rude as ever. None of you have changed after so many years. Laughter was emitted from beside the Heaven Seat King. Black fog surged, and a couple of figures appeared. The youthful-looking Second Seat King shook his head at the Flame Master as he remarked. You things really doesn't seem to die. The Spatial Master looked at these familiar faces and involuntarily laughed coldly. Likewise. Ying Huan's pretty eyes were icy and without any emotional fluctuation. She looked at the Heaven Seat King and slowly said, Don't worry. We should be able to end this millennia-long war. You will not have a third chance. It is not wise to be so confident when declaring such things. The Heaven Seat King smiled as he shook his head. Soon after, he lightly swung his hand. Come out, devil prison. Otherwise, we will be looked down on by others. Rumble. The desert suddenly shook violently when he waved his hand. After which, everyone saw the desert begin to split open and viscous demonic chi surged out like liquid. Countless Yimo seemed to have climbed out from hell, and quickly covered the other side of the desert. It was impossible to count the number of Yimo. Demonic figures stretched to the ends of one's sight. It was clear that all of Devil Prison's strength had been gathered here. Such a lineup did not appear to be any weaker than the three Great Alliance's army. Boom! The land trembled as a huge creature slowly rose within the city. 8 enormous demonic arms extended. It was as though even the air itself was torn apart by him. This was the cosmic evil Devil King. It seems that everyone is here. The Life-Death Master looked at the cosmic evil Devil King and said as a cold expression flashed across her small face. We will stop the Heaven Seat King's group. The other strong individuals and the Devil Prison army will be left to all of you. Ying Huan turned her head. She looked at Tang Xinlian, Little Martin, Ling Qingshu, Qingtan, Qingxi, and the others as she said. Understood. Everyone slowly nodded. Was this the beginning of the decisive battle? 3 armies, listen up. This is our final fight. We will forever be rid of any threats if we win. Should we lose, the miserable fate of this Western Xian region will spread to the entire world. No one will be able to escape. Tang Xinlian gripped her long sword tightly and suddenly swung it downwards. If we wish to protect those whom we care about, then fight. Fight! The eyes of countless individuals turned scarlet red as stern roars resounded. The earth-shaking noise swept over the place like a hurricane, lifting countless grains of sand. Bang! The 3 Great Alliance's army began to move, and formidable Yuan power unfurled. It surged forward like floodwaters, creating battle formations. Their eyes were fully red as they charged towards Devil Prison. Ha ha, listen up, Devil Prison. Kill all of them in order to fulfill the will of the Emperor. The Heaven Seat King also laughed loudly. His laughter was filled with a brutal murderous desire. Charge! A sharp howl erupted from within the Devil Prison army and demonic chi spread. Countless demonic figures seemed to cover the land as they charged forward. Finally, they clashed with the flood-like Alliance army. Bang! 2 seemingly endless streams crashed into each other as the entire desert shook. Yuan power and demonic chi crazily entwined and fought in the air. Fresh blood dyed the land in an instant. The bloody smell and the crazed battle cries reverberated across the land, causing the sun to tremble and hide in the clouds. Let's also attack. Ying Huan's figure moved and shot forward. At the same time, the Heaven Seat King's group on the city wall instantly disappeared. When they next appeared, they were already in front of Ying Huan's group. The Heaven Seat King smiled and looked at Ying Huan's group that stood before them. Ultimately, his eyes paused on Ying Huan as he said, Ice Master, you are no match for me in this condition. Ying Huan was quiet. She suddenly turned around and arrived in front of Lin Dong. Under his stunned gaze, she lifted her pretty face and her cold and soft red lips gently pressed on Lin Dong's lips. Complicated expressions rose in the surrounding crowd. This was because they saw many strange icy symbols surface on Ying Huan's body as the cold chi from her body grew increasingly terrifying. Lin Dong looked at the pretty face that was mere inches away. He could similarly see Ying Huan's originally icy blue hair and eyes gradually become like crystal at this moment. A frightening and foreign coldness slowly emanated from within Ying Huan's body as though it was awakening. This caused Lin Dong to feel a cold piercing pain on his lips. Sorry. An apologetic expression flashed across Ying Huan's eyes. After which, she slowly pulled back. Her crystal-like eyes contained some fear and worry as she stared at Lin Dong. Soon after, she suddenly turned around and removed her snow-white gloves, revealing her crystal arms. Many ice symbols flickered with a strange luster on her arms. Let this world war end here. I do not have the patience to continue playing with all of you. Ying Huan stared at the heaven-seat king. Her voice had now become a lot more ethereal. There seemed to be little emotion within it. Her long crystal hair danced gently. At this moment, she had a kind of iciness that could not be touched. Such iciness even possessed a divine feeling. However, it was also rather distant and unfamiliar. Lin Dong looked at the cold and foreign figure. Both of his hands involuntarily tightened slowly while his body trembled. He knew that the true Ice Master had finally fully awakened. Why? He lowered his head slightly, and a hoarse voice ultimately emerged as his body shook. There seemed to be an endless fury contained within it. Upon hearing the hoarse voice behind her, the chilling aura from Ying Huan's body, which seemed to be able to freeze even the air, momentarily paused. This episode ends here.